This podcast is brought to you by Wise, the app for international people using money around the globe. With Wise, you can send, spend, and receive up to 40 currencies and save up to 55% compared to major banks. Plus, Wise won't add hidden fees to your transfer. Whether you're buying souvenirs with pesos in Puerto Vallarta or spending euros to tip your Colosseum tour guide, you know you're getting a fair exchange rate with no extra markups. Join the 15 million customers who choose Wise. Download the Wise app today or visit wise.com/US/compare to learn more. Terms and conditions apply.
Today on CityCast DC, the government shutdown affects the whole country, but it's an especially big deal here in DC. Our city is already reeling, and now we're facing an event that threatens to scare off tourists and possibly lead to mass layoffs. How's the local government reacting? And what does the shutdown mean for your day-to-day, even if you're still employed? NBC4's Mark Segraves is here to brief us. Today is Thursday, October 2nd. I'm Michael Schaefer, and here's what DC is talking about. All right, before we get into the show, I'm joined by CityCast executive producer Annie Reese because it's the final 48 hours of our membership campaign, and we need you. Hey, Annie.
Hey, Mike. You know, you're right. It's the final 48 hours of the campaign. I know we've been talking about membership a lot. And I know for our current members, that's probably especially a lot. But this is really the time for you to join. We're in this final surge. We need all the help and support we can get. You know, we've talked a lot about on the podcast about the stress from the federal takeover. Today's show is all about, effects of the government shutdown. It is a stressful time in our city, but this is also really a time to kind of like put your money where your mouth is. If you've been thinking about joining, do it now.
Yeah, I know it's like a kind of cruddy time to be asking because a lot of our neighbors, a lot of our friends are without a paycheck, at least, for now, maybe forever.
Yes.
It is a really frightening time for a lot of people in Washington, not just federal employees. I think that's actually a reason to support CityCast, a reason why it's a good thing that CityCast exists. This podcast was set up because we want to connect people more with their city. We spend each episode talking to people who are out in the community, who are reporting, who know things and can bring those things to us in a form that is accessible and interesting and conversational and kind of makes the city feel heard. And that's why I'm into doing it. And I think that's why you're into listening to it.
I think that's spot on, Mike. And I really can't emphasize enough, like if you've been thinking of joining and you haven't quite done it yet, this is really the time. This is really your moment. Perks you get, there are members only events. There's a members only email that comes out each week. You get ad-free listening. We're offering a special free tote this membership campaign only, but really it's also about supporting the work that we do. So you can join at membership.citycast.fm. That's membership.citycast.fm. It's $10 a month or $100 for the year. And thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. The show's doing the podcast means a lot to me. I think it means even more to the folks who work on it behind the scenes. They work really, really hard. I think we make it's kind of a fun, interesting, cool podcast. And I hope you agree. And I hope you'll join. All right, let's go back to the interview. Hey, Mark.
Hey, Mike. Thanks for having me back.
Hey, thanks for being here, man. So listen, a lot of people around DC by this point might think shutdowns are kind of old hat, right? We've had them pretty consistently since 1995. And at least, especially recently, a lot of them have gotten cleared up after a couple of days and everyone gets their back pay. This one kind of feels different. Why is that?
Well, because everything is different under this Trump administration and everything is more dire, and it comes at a time, particularly for DC. Look, I mean, we have armed troops on our streets. We have masked ICE agents scooping people up off the streets. And now we have a government shutdown. At the same time, these businesses around here are still just trying to recover from COVID and the federal government's work from home policy and the private sector's work from home policy. So there's just so many pressures on DC right now. This is just, one more pressure that is just really going to take a toll, because we're going to see so many people possibly out of work, uh, temporarily or permanently, because of this. And again, the other component to this is coming at the same time that, those Doge retirements are wrapping up, and people, should be getting their retirement payments. So just so much uncertainty right now, particularly in the DC region.
So let's break down that uncertainty a little bit. Uh, in prior shutdowns, the economic effect on DC has been both the feds who are at least temporarily not getting paid, and then the foot traffic that is not there. This time, foot traffic is less of a thing because a lot of people still work from home in the private sector, but there is the Trump administration has said that they plan to do mass layoffs in the event of a shutdown. What kind of numbers are we talking about above and beyond the people who've taken the fork in the road?
Well, that's something that, we've been asking. I asked Mayor Bowser about that yesterday, and all she said is that they're prepared for it as far as how many people might end up on, filing for unemployment in the District of Columbia. Let's not forget the added pressure to the DC government is that you file for unemployment where you work, not where you live. So a lot of these federal employees who work in DC, but maybe live in Maryland and Virginia, if they have to file for unemployment, that's going to fall on DC. Dollars wise, we know the last significant extended shutdown cost tens of millions of dollars in lost revenue in the district to businesses, and it cost the district millions of dollars because they were doing things like picking up the trash along the National Mall when the National Park Service couldn't do it. So,
and they were doing that because they are desperate. I've already seen a press release within hours of the shutdown to tell the world of tourists, hey, we're still open and the parks are still safe. And if that means we're going to do the Park Service's job and keep them clean, we got to do that in order to keep the tourists coming.
Yeah, but they can't keep the museums open. We saw one statement from I think it was the Smithsonian that said they've got enough money to stay open till the 6th of October. So if this goes beyond that, you're going to start seeing major closures in a lot of these major tourist attractions. Not to mention the business travel that the government business travel that won't be coming to town during this time. So tourism, hotels, the ripple effect, just more pain on top of an already very painful economy for Washington, D.C.
So can we go back to the jobs for just a sec? The district's CFO had estimated that the sort of Trump era cuts and relocations out of Washington would cause D.C. to lose 40,000 of its 200,000 federal jobs. We're now obviously talking about stuff above and beyond that, maybe. Do they have any kind of thinking? I mean, when she says we're prepared, what kind of numbers are they throwing around among themselves?
I think they have not released or publicized numbers that they're really anticipating, but they will always just throw back to COVID, right? When they just got every, state's unemployment offices just got flooded beyond anything that they could imagine. And so during that time, DC did not run out of money, right? And there's this whole mechanism for how they get more money from the federal government for it. DC didn't, have to trigger that, and so they're very proud of that. So they think they can handle that. The mayor, along with regional leaders, on Thursday is rolling out or Wednesday, I'm sorry, rolling out a new jobs initiative. This was planned before the shutdown, but certainly is timely with the shutdown, that this is just one more way that they're going to try to be connecting people who are out of work back into the workforce.
And look, if you're making a budget for Washington, D.C., I would assume in any time you kind of build in an expectation that the government is going to grind to a halt at some point during your 4-year budget prediction.
That's a very interesting question that we just got the estimate revenues from the CFO were just released this week, that were a bit of a bright spot. Some unanticipated additional revenue that will give the district a little bit of a comfort zone to do some things that they might not have been able to do. And so that was a good news. But that's a really good question, whether the CFO factors that in when he's looking down the road. Certainly he would have factored it in to this most recent, knowing that it was on the horizon. But as you said at the top, since the '90s, this has become the new norm. It's less, in some ways, it's white noise and less scary because we hear it all the time. It gets to be repetitive. But then when we look back at an example where the government was closed for weeks and weeks and weeks, it becomes very real. And again, this time around, everything is more real because we're already wounded, right? And so this is just one more injury inflicted on the District of Columbia.
So speaking of wounded, there was obviously this year, there's been a big controversy over this $1 billion of the city budget that Congress did not allow DC to spend because of an accident. A lot of people have felt like they stole our money. This was supposed to get fixed in the budget. No budget means no fix. Is there anything on the horizon there?
So here is how that really lays out. And there was a lot of misinformation put out by particularly Republicans during that congressional oversight hearing with the district. The CR, if the CR were passed, it has language that would allow the district to spend at its current levels. What happened in the CR the last time is that it required that the district, that all federal agencies go back to the previous year's spending limits. And DC had always been exempted from that clause in the CRs. Last CR, DC was not exempted and was forced to spend in the middle of a fiscal year at the previous year's budget, which was $1 billion difference. And so they were faced with cutting $1 billion out of their current budget, the FY25 budget, with only a matter of months left in that fiscal year. The district was able to, through some legal wrangling loopholes, get that number down to $400 million. So that's how much DC was not allowed to spend. And DC still has that money. So the feds, it wasn't federal money, it was DC money. And DC, the federal government didn't take it away. They just prohibited them from spending in that way. So that money is sitting there, and the district can begin to spend it in this next fiscal year. The misinformation that a lot of Republicans, particularly Chairman Comer of the House Oversight Committee, were putting out there was that this CR, if passed, would restore that $1 billion, as well as protect DC going forward from having to have that restriction. That's not the case. It did not include any language. It does not include any language that would restore. But that's really a moot point at this point. But it does, thankfully, include language that was sent down from the White House. So this is President Trump doing a solid to Washington, D.C., sent language to the Republicans saying, hey, we want this language back in the CR that protects D.C., that allows them to spend at their current spending levels. Sorry for the long answer there.
No, it actually leads me into the next question, which is, under this sort of weird quirk of the law by which, for budget purposes, Washington, D.C. gets classified as a federal agency. In the past, that meant that during a shutdown, like literally D.C. garbage collection paid for by your tax dollars and mine could not be done. That was fixed some years ago. Is that going to stay fixed?
Yeah, so the first way that it was fixed was then Mayor Vincent Gray declared every DC employee essential, right? Remember, because even today, like if you declare somebody essential, FAA, right? Then okay, they're not impacted. They got to go to work, right? So Mayor Gray declared all DC workers to be essential workers. So that was the first workaround in the shutdown. Then Delegate Norton got language put in exempting DC from the shutdown. And that language currently exists. So DC is exempt from the shutdown. And so the vast majority of things that you rely on the DC government for during the shutdown will not be impacted. You still got to pay the parking meters. You can go to the DMV and get your driver's license. If you got jury duty, show up for jury duty. If you got a court case, show for your court case. But you won't be able to get a marriage license. That will shut down in the DC courthouse. So, but the vast majority of things you rely upon the DC government for will still be there operating as normal.
Wait, why can't you get a marriage license?
It is so the DC courts, technically are federally funded, and so they have only essential services going on, and certain things.
Wait, I thought these guys were pro-marriage. Isn't that essential?
I'm not going to defend or you go down that road, but
can you get a divorce?
There are some things in the DC Superior Court, and the one that I know because I asked about it was Marriage License Bureau would shut down. Family court stays open. The regular Court of Appeals stays open. DC Superior, most cases stay open. But there are a few things that would close within the DC Superior Court. So you might want to check first before going down. But if you're getting married this weekend and you didn't get your marriage license, you might have an issue there.
So divorce, yes. Marriage, no. If family court's still open.
Again, you might want to call first on that one. Yeah.
But actually, there's a more serious one, which is public defense and offender supervision, which is like parole and stuff. Are those affected?
So CSOSA, and which is monitors people who are on ankle bracelets and whatnot. Those would fall. My understanding is under law enforcement, which is deemed essential. So those types of things, the Marshal Service, U.S. Marshal Service, would be deemed essential, and so would all of the federal agents you see on the streets during the surge. And the National Guard. Now, with the National Guard, there is some question as to whether or not they'll be paid. But what we know right now, the federal government shutdown does not mean a shutdown to the federal law enforcement surge in DC.
Wait, can we talk though about some of the federal things that will stop? And obviously for a lot of our listeners and a lot of our neighbors, your job is the biggest and most important one. But for visitors, for people sort of trying to take part in just regular life around town, you mentioned the Smithsonian going to stay open till Monday, I guess. But what about other stuff? The memorials on the mall, National Gallery is a separate entity.
Right, and we're just there have been the National Mall and the memorials should stay open, but I definitely remember during one shutdown, they actually shut off access to the World War II memorial. And I remember specifically standing out there and honor flight vets were coming in and were being turned away from that outdoor memorial. But I believe, the problem with this time around is the guidance everybody got came so late. Typically before a shutdown, the federal government puts out guidance well in advance. But as of early yesterday, they were referring reporters to guidance for 2024. So we really got a late start on, getting clear guidance from all these, the National Park Service and, all the different agencies that DC residents and visitors interact with every day.
I mean, there is stuff that I assumed costs nothing to continue, but that gets turned off, like the panda cam, the animal cams at the zoo. Did they stop the water flowing to fountains and the reflecting pool?
I do recall the fountains being turned off during one shutdown. I think the DuPont Circle fountain. And I think they may have said then after that was a mechanical issue. But you're going to start seeing this kind of stuff all around town, depending on how long this goes. And I think that's another reason that this one is different, is because there's this fear, again, because the political climate is so much different than it ever has been before. We do not see any bipartisanship, right? We don't see anything like that these days. And so the idea that, these two sides are going to get in a room, they got in a room with the president the other day and came out unsuccessful. So the fear is that, both sides might be willing to let this go, longer than anybody really wants it to. And so we're really in uncharted waters.
Don't miss Folger Theater's Julius X, playing September 23rd through October 26th at the Folger Shakespeare Library. This bold new play by Peabody Award-winning journalist Al Letson remixes Shakespeare's Julius Caesar with the history of Malcolm X, sampling lyrically and historically from Shakespeare's text, famous speeches by civil rights leaders, and Letson's own verse. Directed by DC-based theater artist Nicole Brewer and starring renowned Shakespearean actor Brandon Carter, Julius X explores the historical weight of Malcolm X's last days and the cyclical nature of ambition, power, and revolution. Tickets start at $20 and can be purchased online at folger.edu or by calling the box office at 202-544-7077, Tuesday through Sunday, 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. Get yours today. When the Library of Congress says it's a library for you, they really mean it. The library hosts year-round free events to share its collections with the public, both in person and online. Visit loc.gov/events to elevate your happy hour every Thursday with eclectic entertainment and cocktails during Live at the Library. Bring kids for hands-on activities at family days. Find daytime workshops for lifelong learners in Afternoons with the Library. Enjoy world-class live music in their Concerts from the Library of Congress series and more. Whatever your age or interest, there's a program to connect you to the Library of Congress collections. Plan your next visit at loc.gov/events. That's loc.gov/events. Hey, it's Mike here. I'm one of your hosts at CityCast DC. And you know from listening to this show that we love DC and that we love helping you understand it and be more a part of it. But the only reason this show works is because of you. You tune in because you're genuinely invested in our local conversation. If I had to guess, you're probably someone who shops local whenever possible. You've probably signed a petition or two to help out your neighbors. You might be the go-to friend for local gossip. And I wouldn't be surprised if you carry your library card around wherever you go. If this sounds like you, I'd like to invite you to join CityCast DC Neighbors. Our membership program is designed to help folks like you who care about our city engage more deeply with life here. You'll get invites to members-only events, our curated weekly roundup of the best things to do in the city, and the chance to share what you love about DC on our podcast. Plus, your membership directly supports the people making this podcast, so we can keep bringing you the local stories that matter. Become a CityCast DC neighbor for $10 a month or $100 a year at membership.citycast.fm. That's membership.citycast.fm. And thank you so much. Oh, and now through October 3rd, when you sign up, you get this awesome tote that says Neighbors Make DC, because it's true. When neighbors show up, our community thrives. Join today and get the tote at membership.citycast.fm. I'm popping back in with Annie to note again that it's the final 48 hours of our fall membership campaign. After 48 hours goes by, we will pipe down. I promise. But I hope by then you'll have joined up.
That's true. We do really promise to pipe down. But also, if you feel like you've been hearing about it a lot, that also means, that's number one, that's true. And number two, that means you've been listening a lot, which is great. That means that we are a part of your daily, weekly experience of getting news in DC. We are really proud. It's not every workplace or job you can say that you really like what you do and you're really proud of what you do. And we feel that at CityCast, but we are a small but mighty team. Putting out a daily podcast and newsletter is a lot sometimes. And membership is a crucial way for us to keep expanding in ambition and doing what we love to do, which is telling stories about DC.
And just to say, we're also, in addition to being proud of what we do, we're proud of people who listen to us. And I got to say,
really
personally, I write a column in Politico. I'm a writer and editor there. And out there in the world of national politics, when you write something that someone somewhere doesn't agree with, your inbox is like a sewer. Yeah. It's awful, right? At CityCast, I've said stuff, I'm allowed to have opinions here. I've said stuff on our pod that people disagree with. And the response is like, hey, I really didn't agree with what you said. Did you think about it this way?
It's
Et
so
cetera.
true.
And it's like, these are my neighbors. These are thoughtful people who care a lot about our city and have maybe a different way of looking at things from me. But we're in a community together. We all got to live together, and we try to share our opinions, and we do so in a way that actually indicates that just about everyone who is involved in CityCast on both sides of the microphone, listening and talking, lives here on purpose and cares a great deal about this place we live.
Such a great point, Mike. Like our listeners and our members are so smart, so engaged, and it is really a pleasure to get feedback, whether it's constructive criticism or praise and thanks. I mean, we get show ideas when we're out, at member events talking to folks. Like, it is really such a pleasure to talk with other people who feel as engaged about civic events and local news as you do. It really is one of the things that gives me a huge amount of hope. So you can become a member by going to membership.citycast.fm. It's $10 a month or $100 a year. Again, that is membership.citycast.fm. And thank you for being you.
Thank you, Annie. Let's get back to Mark Segraves. One thing that appears to be the same is a bunch of restaurants have specials for this, but that actually strikes me as not necessarily a given, because the hospitality industry is facing a potential real shock if the number of tourists and visitors falls, as well as a shock from a lot of their customers, their regular clientele, suddenly not having paychecks.
Look, the restaurant industry is getting hit so hard, right? Again, COVID, still recovering from that. Work from home, still recovering from that. Then you have so many restaurants that are dependent on the immigrant population for their workforce. So they have this added pressure of just fear, if nothing else, of ICE coming into their restaurants and taking employees away, right? And we see it with Uber delivery drivers all the time. I saw it just the other day, a guy on a scooter delivering food pulled over by federal agents and taken into custody. And now you add this on top of that, and some of the restaurant, it wasn't too long ago that the biggest thing facing the restaurant industry, regardless of which side you went on, it was certainly the biggest country, was the tipped minimum wage, right? And so the restaurant hospitality industry has been in the bullseye of all of this. And then, National Guard troops. I have friends in the suburbs. I'm sure you do too. And I see it on my social media. Oh, yeah. Until this is all over, I'm not going into the district, right? They're just not because they feel any more or less safe from crime. They just don't want to face the possibility of interacting with roadblocks or armed troops or any of that. And so it's a tough time for the restaurant business, which in the best of times is
Tough
a tough
business. Yeah.
business, right?
So listen, the shutdown, I think too often these that get portrayed as like, these politicians are just at loggerheads and why can't they get along? But the thing that the Democrats are holding out for here, they say they are not going to make a deal unless some of the pretty significant cuts to Obamacare and healthcare funding are restored. Those cuts themselves, if they are not restored, have a pretty big impact on DC and on what sort of services and healthcare it can provide to residents. What does the city administration say about what those cuts would do in terms of numbers?
So, and let's not forget, at the same time, Mayor Bowser's budget threw 50,000 DC residents off of Medicaid, right? So it's both federal actions and local actions. Now, the district government is creating this new healthcare system for those people who are losing their Medicaid coverage to kind of fill the gap for that. But this is just going to be one added pressure on the district government. Healthcare always falls to the government. People that don't have healthcare, they end up in the emergency room, and so you're also looking at SNAP benefits, right? You're looking at people losing their SNAP benefits at the same time. So, DC has really prided itself on doing a pretty good job of having a social safety net for things like that, particularly healthcare. Like, go back to David Catania. Anybody who remembers David Catania on the council was the guy who really led the charge to get so many people in DC enrolled in healthcare, in health insurance, and to provide healthcare opportunities in the communities, particularly communities east of the river, that didn't have hospitals. And so, DC would always say they have the largest, percentage of residents who are covered. But that comes at a cost. And now,
right, and there's about to be a lot more people needing help getting covered.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Going forward, I mean, we're at very early days now. I'm curious, is there what in particular are you going to be watching for that maybe I didn't ask about, people ought to know to look for?
I think, and this is kind of unrelated to the whole shutdown. I'm looking to see if we see an increase in the surge, if we see more and more ICE and ICE detentions coming up through here, and what happens as far as the cooperation with the Bowser administration and her reaction to this. She still walks this line of not wanting to poke the bear in the White House, right? And even when she was asked before the shutdown about the impact, she was very careful not to lay blame on one side of the aisle or the other. Her last comment was, the district government's able to do a budget and pass a budget every year. Congress and the White House should be able to do the same thing, which is a very fair comment to make. But she didn't really take a side in this. And so it'll be interesting to see locally if she does. She is coming under so much pressure because of her handling of the surge and the Trump administration, that it is, one can only imagine.
And it's in the nature of our system. It's in the nature of our system in the whole United States that when federal money goes away from something, it's the state government or the city government or whatever that have to mete out the damage, that have to be the ones making the cuts. And therefore, it's like mayors and governors who are really going to be coming under a lot of pressure, like her.
Yep, absolutely. Yes, in so many ways, not just the federal government shutdown, but then again, the president's threat to take the federal surges on the road to other cities. And that's why I think when people see a video of an ICE interaction, regardless of where it is in the country, it hits home because it's happening everywhere now.
Hey, Mark, thank you for being here. This is super, super helpful.
Mike, it's always great to talk with you. Thanks again for having me.
That's Mark Segraves from NBC4. Thank you. All right, listen, before we go, I want to thank our newest CityCast DC neighbors, Rachel W., Kristen L., Sarah T., Sarah H., Christopher N., Linda K., SEK, Kim B., Carrie S., and Natasha B. Remember, when you join, you get a bunch of perks, including a limited edition free tote. Join by going to membership.citycast.fm. That's membership.citycast.fm. And that is all for today here on CityCast DC. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our morning newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye.